This show is sponsored by PowerfulWomenUSA.com. Hey everybody, I'm Jill Conway, and this is Secrets of Powerful Women, a show dedicated to celebrating and supporting strong and successful women and sharing their stories. I am hoping that you will be inspired and feel empowered, reclaim your voice and discover your strengths, and know that you are not alone. My guest today is Bethany Braun Silva. She is author of the book, Like a Mother, Banish Guilt, Blaze Your Trail, and Break the Rules to Create the Life You Love. Do we not love that? She has a podcast on mom.com called Breakdown with Bethany, all about parenting, and she's a former editor at parenting.com. Thank you for being here, Bethany, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I am really, really excited to get into all the things.
Oh my gosh, we are going to get into them. So let's start with the book because it's a wonderful read. I was telling you, I was reading it, and it really is a must read for all women and not just moms, even though we'll get into the whole like a mother, because at first I was like, what is this about, right? So talk to me about the whole premise of the book and where you got the title from.
Well, the premise of the book really is about loving like a mother. So even though it can be a little bit misleading that it even though I wrote the book primarily with mothers in mind, it really is, like you said, for all women. It's about loving yourself the way a mother loves, right? As moms, or even if you're not a mom, you certainly know a mom. You know, you
have a mom.
You have
right?
a mom, right? You see the way that it's kind of like this stereotypical thing, the way mothers love, right? We care for everybody else before ourselves. So I wanted to flip that on its head and say, what if we cared for ourselves the way that we care for others? And now what then, right? Now, like, what's then? I just kind of threw that question out there in hoping to inspire and like really kind of, it was almost like a call to action.
Yeah, but it is such a deep thought. It is such a deep, profound issue and concern, because self-love is everything, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
How did you come up with that title?
Well, so I'll be honest with you. The original title of the book was First Comes Love, based off of that, the nursery rhyme. And I had found myself sitting on the subway with a toddler and a newborn, feeling like I had done everything out of order. And I mentioned that in the book too. So I had to like flip this nursery rhyme on its head, right? And so, but then wanting it to be a bigger message, right? About that self-love. And I, as on my podcast, we do talk a lot about self-care. What does that look like for the women that come on beyond like manis, petties, and like personal hygiene, right? Trips to the store alone. Like it has to be more than that, right? Yeah. So that's really why I kind of wanted to make the title Like a Mother. And because I'm a born and bred New York girl from Manhattan, I also wanted to have a little playfulness, a little edginess to it. And you think like a mother, right?
Yeah,
what does that mean, right? Like we do things like a mother, right? Like, so we like to really bring that into it as well.
Yeah, I have. So I did read it, and I want to just talk about that quick, because in the book you say, my goal for writing this book is for you to embrace the traits you've developed, the growth you've experienced, and the person you've become. It is for you to love yourself first, forge your own path, and create your own trail unapologetically. Italicized, print, bold, right there. It is so true. It is so very true, because we apologize for everything, right?
Yeah.
As a woman, we apologize.
Absolutely. And I do think what I also wanted to sort of drive home with that is that you have everything you need to do whatever you want right now. One of my favorite people, Mel Robbins, has this big thing about just start.
Yeah.
Don't wait for the right moment. And I really believe in that so wholeheartedly, that we always want to wait till maybe the kids are out of the house. We want to, to make sure things are perfect. Oh, I've taken too much time off. I can't go back into the workforce. I say just start, just jump in. You have everything that you need to start right now. And that really is again, more of a call to action for women to not hold themselves back. Break the rules, blaze your trail, do it from wherever you are right now. And that's what I did. If I can give a little background, I did not.
Of course, yeah.
I started a career in journalism with absolutely no education, training, or contacts. And I just kind of went for it. And I wanted other women to feel that kind of moved or inspired to follow those dreams. And
right.
It's the biggest dream for my life is to inspire other women to do the same thing.
No, you wanted to be a writer, or what did you go to school for?
I went to, oh gosh.
What did you want to be when you
I didn't know. I really didn't know. on my senior year of high school, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and everything kind of got thrown on its head, right? Sure. Like when I was supposed to like fly the coop, right, leave home, I was kind of forced to stay back and like help manage my health. And so I went to school for drama. I know it sounds silly, but it was sort of like an easy thing for me at the time. So I got into NYU, Tisch School of the Arts, and studied drama there. And I realized that my passion, what I thought was maybe acting or drama, was really just a passion for telling stories and connection. And so, pursued it here and there for a little bit, and then decided, this is it, journalism. I found myself in Los Angeles, wanted to take a broadcast journalism class at UCLA, fell in love with it, and it's like, okay, this is my medium. This is my medium for telling stories, for connecting, and all of that.
Right. And what happened? So
then I got pregnant and got a job, and it all happened very fast. I was a 26-year-old pregnant intern at a media agency, writing kind of, what do you call it? Like, TLC kind of stories, like about, crazy surgeries, or, I tell this one story about, I went dining with the Freegans, which is essentially dumpster diving, when I was like 6 to 8 weeks pregnant. And I didn't do it, but like I didn't eat the food, but that was my story. Right. So I had to follow around the Freegans, the dumpster divers, while they made this like crazy feast out on Rockaway.
And you're right. Oh, wow.
And then from there, the parenting became my beat, mothers, lifestyle, and it just grew from there.
But you have a very powerful voice and a big voice in it too. And you mentioned that quote, and it's interesting because I made a few notes, obviously, and you talk about the unwritten rules of life that are taught to girls, and just that nursery rhyme alone: first comes love, then comes marriage, then comes baby and the baby carriage. But like so many women, you didn't follow those rules, and it's okay. It's more than okay.
Right. I don't know about you, but when I was a little girl, I was really loud and bossy, and it was encouraged by my parents, and sort of like, it was a fun and funny thing, and she's so bossy and brassy and all of this. But somewhere along the way, I learned to be small. And I think a lot of women learned, like, you're too big, you're too much, and that physically and emotionally and all of it. Right. So now we learn to shrink ourselves. We learn to fit into spaces where it's acceptable. And I'm certainly not the first one to come up with this concept of, of that, but it's something that really resonated with me. And I saw it in myself. Somewhere in my adolescence or childhood, I went from big to small. I stopped growing. I actually started shrinking. And I know a lot of women do that.
For sure.
It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because why? Do you think it's like happened in like middle school, high school?
Yeah, I think, maybe you were too loud and you were made to feel ashamed for it, or you gained weight, or you went through puberty and you were made to feel ashamed for it, and it is kind of this sort of like societal thing, right?
Yeah.
Stuff that even sometimes we can't even control, how fast we develop as girls, or, just our having an opinion and then feeling like we weren't supposed to have that opinion. It was the wrong opinion. How dare you speak out? When not to generalize, but it doesn't always happen with boys. I'm a mom of 2 boys, and I even see it with them. They're meant to be bold and loud and take big risks, and we want that for our women. Kind of, we can say that we do. We want that for our girls and for our women, and now we're maybe seeing a shift, but I wasn't taught that. Right. I was taught to play a little bit smaller. And again, not by my parents or anything like that. It was just something that I saw kind of just like inherently growing up. Be smaller. You're too loud. You're too much.
Well, because like you said, you're bold, and yet there's that other B word that people like to call strong women.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm just ready to kind of like throw that all out the window.
Yeah, but I think that's fantastic. And that's why you're here, because I love it, because that's what we need to tell everybody. And it's women of all ages need to hear that.
Yeah.
Like, stop shrinking down. Stop doing that to yourself. I don't know. You're right. I mean, I think we all go through that phase where, all of a sudden, especially our body's changing, and our body's changing constantly throughout our lives. And we're like, we are meant to feel like we're meant to feel shame for a lot of different things, which I can't understand why we do that to ourselves and why others are comfortable making us feel that way. I mean, and even in your title, banish guilt. I mean, that's a huge thing. We feel guilty. I mentioned this on another show. We are made to feel guilty for everything. We're made to feel guilty when we go to work and we leave the kids at home, maybe with a sitter or whatever. We're made to feel guilty at work when you need to leave for something, and it's like something's got to give. Like, what are we doing?
Right. And I think it really does go. So we talk about mom guilt a lot, especially in my industry with what I do for a living. Mom guilt is sort of rampant, but I do think there's this kind of feminine guilt that, you don't have to be a mother to experience, like we're saying, right? Like if you're feel too ambitious, quote unquote, or, you decide to, rest when you should be working. There's always feels like there's a choice, and maybe you don't always feel like you're picking the right one. Right. And, I think where you and I align is like wanting to kind of like dismantle that, like, and support women, have them, feel empowered and with whatever choice they make that's right for them.
Right. Dream bigger. What about your dreams? You don't never have to let go of them, So do you like you said you didn't follow those rules, right? And the baby carriage was before the marriage. That's a lot of women, and do you feel, how do you feel that this, society or the people around you looked at you, or talk about that? I did carry a lot of shame around that for a long time. And again, like even with really well-meaning family members, and marriage was never kind of the dream. Motherhood was. Right. It wasn't my dream. I didn't care if I got married or not, to be honest.
But I knew that I wanted children, and people very close to me knew that. But of course, the minute I got pregnant, I started to announce it. It was, when's the wedding? When's the wedding? Or do you guys like? My husband,
like, you have to.
We didn't even live together at the time.
Right.
So there was a lot. I carried a lot of shame. I remember apologizing to my grandmother, and she was like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry it's happening this way. And this is kind of stuff that you just kind of maybe I made myself feel, but again, it was something that I had seen or heard or felt out there in like the ethos that made me feel that way. But
it's so upsetting.
Yeah.
I'm tearing up because it's like, oh my God, that we feel right, that you felt you had to apologize to your grandma. And a lot of people have to do that. The older people in the house, like, I'm apologizing for how I am or how things are working out for me. When it's like, you know what? You want to be like, this is who I am. And this is what has gone down. And this, I'm okay with it. I'll figure it out.
Right. And, of course, you think everything happens for a reason. Both of my boys were at my wedding to their father. So there was that beautiful aspect to it. And then now I get to tell this story. And there's and to be honest, I have a core group of girlfriends. There's about 5 of us, and 3 of us were not married before we had kids. 2 of us were. And it's just kind of like, this is how it goes now.
Right. Well, who cares?
Right. Who cares?
Right. Are you a loving mom?
Yes.
Right. Exactly. And
unequivocally.
You know what? Right. And that's all that matters.
Right.
That's all that matters. This idea, and I don't want to get DM'd or anything for this on social media, but the idea that we need a man to make ourselves whole is nauseating to me. Well, and I'm happily married, guys. Yeah. For a long time.
And so am I. So am I. And but the thing is, like, but it kind of goes back to that old saying, like, if you aren't already whole, how can you ever be in a relationship? And actually, again, you and I talked a little bit about this before, but I went through that in real time with my husband. Right. Coming into the relationship, even with babies, like being not whole and having to work through that together. And I can tell you need to already be whole for any relationship to work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you want to talk about that? I mean, you say that, so in the book, you say that, you talk about doubts and insecurities, but you knew that you had the one thing, which is yourself. You found yourself in the process, it sounds like. And that all came to you after you had a child. And you wrote, you should redirect the fierceness of becoming a parent to ourselves. So we're going back to that. So what was the thought process after you had a child, and what was going through your mind when you're like, I mean, what's going on here? Because everyone changes. When mentally, physically, everything, emotionally, after you have a child.
Absolutely. So a lot of that kind of like textbook stuff happens. Yeah, you get that mama bear instinct. I think that's the fierceness that I was really referring to there. Like all of a sudden, nothing matters and everything matters, and it's kind of all wrapped up in this tiny person. Right. And I'm an only child, and I spend a lot of time alone. I spend a lot of time kind of like getting to know myself without even without consciously doing it. I speak to myself, and I did that as a little girl, and so understanding that in moments of like stress or betrayal or sadness or trauma, I always went back to myself. And it wasn't until I was, now a mother, and let's be very clear, motherhood, I was thrown on my butt with motherhood for so many reasons, but mostly because I mentioned I was an only child, and I thought, okay, now I'm going to get this kind of big, full life. I'm going to be a mother. Things are going to be great. It was the most isolating and lonely time I've ever experienced. And I think a lot of women go through that, and they go through that like surprisingly. They're not expecting to feel so lonely and isolated. And so then that fierceness that I was talking about, like if you can come up for air in a moment of clarity when you're raising young children, is to remember that you always got yourself. You do, you know, whatever, however corny it is. I talk about it in the book. I use mantras and affirmations.
I love it. Yeah.
But that's what I do. And it helps me not to feel alone. It helps give me kind of the strength. And it was definitely heightened when I had my child, because the time it felt so dire. And I don't want to say, I have to be careful with my words here, because like I was very lonely and isolated, but then it just made it more urgent for me to kind of get to that fierce place.
Right. Sure. Well, what is, you know, for the people who don't know, let's say, and the people who are listening, or like isolating, describe that as a mother, because people who don't have kids, or they're younger, or they don't want to ever have kids, and that's fine. Who cares, right? Be you. But they think, right, a baby. Well, I remember someone saying to me, okay, when I was married, they're like, well, and I was like, because marriage isn't the end all be all either, right? And you can be lonely in your marriage. Right. And we were young, and we were all working and stuff. They're like, oh, just have a baby, make everything all right. Everything will be all right if you just have a baby. And I was like, I mean, what? Who says things like that? And they truly, I think, mean well. But it's like, where'd we learn that from? Let's just have a baby and everything will be all right. I mean, good God, that's having a baby. The whole thing, from being pregnant on to they just hand this baby to you, be like, you can take it home now, and you're like, should I? What do I know about having a baby? But I think that in itself is you really have to reach out to people.
Absolutely. And it was something that I didn't expect, and quite honestly, and there's so much joy and happiness from motherhood. Absolutely.
Sure, of course.
That's what
I love my children. Right.
Yeah. And I feel like I don't even need to caveat by saying that, but there is so much joy, so much love. It is such a beautiful experience. I was not prepared to feel so isolated. I just wasn't. I think that's what it was.
Because you always have to be home, right, with the baby.
Yeah, I think it was because you were home. The baby, first of all, relies on you more than anybody in the world.
Yes.
Especially for those first few months.
Yes.
You are. Even if you have a partner sleeping next to you, you were probably the one who was doing the primary feedings at night, if you depending on how you were feeding your child.
Right.
I just remember feeling like it was just him and I in this world, and I did have help. I had support. I had my mother-in-law. I had my own mother. And I did have a supportive spouse, but there's something about being in the throes of new motherhood, and I cannot really articulate it. It just feels like you're a bit on an island, and and it's very hard to reach for people, and so it's really important for people to reach to you in those moments. I would say, if anyone's listening who knows a new mother in their life, definitely make the effort to reach out there, because they may be wanting help and just don't know how to ask for it.
That's true, because when I think about it, in the times, after I had given birth, I have 3 kids, or just being a mother, you start to lose your sense of identity, I guess, because now everything is just taking care of your kids, right? So I think that's isolating too, because you're like, wait a minute, like it's okay if you have a job and leave. It's okay to figure out who you are and still be a mom, you can still figure it all out without letting the isolation really get to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is pretty much what my book is about too, is really to kind of lean into your passions and your ambitions, not in spite of having a baby, but also because you have one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's such a great book. We have about a minute and a little over a minute before the commercial break, but you talk about that you wanted to share your story to inspire women to go out in the world like a mother, loving and fierce, with a new set of rules to play by. So I think when we come back, we'll talk about the new rules right? And I love what you do in the book where you say the old rule and the new rule. And I wrote down some because I was like, wow, this is awesome. This is really awesome. So please stick around. We're going to talk about all of that. We'll be back with Bethany Braun Silva, writer, podcast host, and author of Like a Mother, Banish Guilt, Blaze Your Trail, and Break the Rules to Create the Life You Love. That is coming up after the commercial break. You're listening to Secrets of Powerful Women. Join our community. Please head to powerfulwomenusa.com for more information and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Amazon Music, Spotify. We're all over the place, and YouTube. Come on back. Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Secrets of Powerful Women. Bethany Braun Silva is here. She has a successful podcast on parenting called Breakdown with Bethany on mom.com, and the author of a great book called Like a Mother, Banish Guilt, Blaze Your Trail, and Break the Rules to Create the Life You Love. Bethany is such a... First of all, the title's amazing, as we talked about that, but let's talk about the rules. You talk about that, women go out into the world and they have a set of rules that they feel like they have to live by. But after you become a mother, all the bets are off. Like, the rules change. Yeah. So what's a rule that you wrote about that kind of really pops out that you remember?
Well, yeah, in chapter 3, I write about, betting on yourself. And it's funny, I actually do remember having a teacher in grad school tell me, I make rules just for you because you're always like doing whatever you want. And so I've always been a bit of a rule breaker. So I will say that. But the old rule in chapter 3 is wait for the right opportunities to present themselves to create an amazing life. Right. And the new rule that I propose is create your own opportunities and remember that you are limitless. And so that's really what I like to, again, with what we talked about, starting now, starting wherever you're at. I do believe in the kind of like build it and they will come mentality. Like if you have a dream in your heart, the thing that you really want to pursue, whether it's a business opportunity or a product or a book or a podcast, an idea for a show. Yeah. Maybe it's to travel, whatever it is. Maybe it's to become a mother. Right. I mean, I do believe in take the leap and the net will show itself.
And you don't have to have it all figured out.
No, I don't. And that could, and some people could say, oh, that's a little dangerous. Like, you're just kind of telling people to go out there. But, you don't have to listen to me. But I will say that it's worked for me because anything I've ever done that way, I did with such conviction. So you really have to have the conviction first, the belief in what you're doing. And then, of course, the belief in yourself. Right.
And you, in the book, so you talk about the 3 R's: recognize, reframe, and reconnect. What do you mean? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, so it was really important for me to not just make this a story about, my experience, but also give women tools to, in the moment or when they're feeling overwhelmed or when they're not sure what to do next, to use these 3 R's to kind of take inventory of their situation and then figure out the next step. Because like we've talked about, it's really easy to get stuck. It's really easy to get stuck in motherhood. It's really easy to get stuck at a job you hate. It's easy to get stuck in a relationship that's not right for you. But if you're able to kind of pause, breathe, recognize, reframe, I forget, what was the third one?
And reconnect.
And, with really, yourself. Exactly. Yeah. And then you're able to take a step forward and, in whatever way that is right for you. I think there's more danger in feeling stagnant, and then feeling stuck, staying, than moving.
God. So many people though stay stuck.
Of course.
Yeah, they're afraid, I guess, to take a chance on something. What's the worst that could happen? I mean, really, all right, you fail and then you learn from it, right? Right. It's such an amazing idea, and then we all don't support each other enough. Oh, there was a quote that you said, you grew up listening. Your mom used to say to you,
Yeah. Thoughts are things which you think you will become. And I say this to my children a lot. And, believe it or not, whatever you want to think, I do believe in the power of positive thinking. I do believe that thoughts are things. If my son we just got into it the other day because every morning he wakes up, he tells me he doesn't feel good. I'm like, you do though. Like, why are you saying that? Now you're going to make it true. And so it's really simple things like that. And I think for women especially, what we tell ourselves becomes our reality.
Well, I agree with you because I'm all about that. I mean, I think, there's I don't know if you listen, and I always talk about him, but Dr. Joe Dispenza. I don't know him. Oh my God. So he talks about epigenetics and how every single thought you think starts off like changing your neurons and things like that, how it goes to different parts of the body, and it really affects how then you feel. And it can affect your body in all these different ways. So, and it's amazing because I believe in that too. And I think, and Tony Robbins and all the things affirmations are so powerful. And we don't, I know I've listened to them for years, and I have people I know in my life, they're like, oh, come on. But it makes a big difference.
And I would say any naysayer, if you're willing, just try it. Right. See what happens. You might be really surprised. I think I got my husband into it a little bit.
Really?
Like just really That's getting hard. Him to like change the kind of like every morning, like, that kind of thing. And like, wake up. Here, you got another day. What are you going to do? You're going to make the best of it? You're going to make the worst of it. It's your choice. You always have a choice.
Well, they say, like Dr. Joe there says, like within the first few minutes of waking up, don't grab your phone, which is very hard. I started to do that. I was like, oh gosh, okay. And he's like, just take those few minutes to just say like, how grateful I am. Today's going to be an awesome day. And it really changes how you feel.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely look him up. All right. Anyway, back to this. So, you talk about setting your own rules and expectations and learning how to talk to yourself like you are your own best friend. To stop, and you say in the book, you need to stop looking outward for reassurance and self-love. That's powerful.
I mean, we're all guilty of that, right?
For
like
sure.
We all want to be seen and heard in a certain way and come across in a certain way.
Yeah.
But if we focus too much on that, then I think it sort of like muddies the waters, right? Like it's like weakens the sauce, all those kind of metaphors. But I think like the most powerful relationship we have is the one we have with ourselves. And it's definitely a work in progress. Like when it comes to that. But I could say that the more my relationship with myself is strengthened, like the more I am focusing on those affirmations or taking time to really connect, do what kind of, fills my cup, then I see that my relationship with my husband get better. I see my work get better. I see my relationship with my children get better. So it really does kind of overflow into all the parts of our lives that are important to us.
Right. So, you're working on another book.
Oh my gosh, I am.
Now, it's scary.
It's so scary, and I can share a little bit about it. This is sort of the first time I'm talking about it, but I turned 40 in 2 months. And
happy birthday!
Thank you. And I had an idea and I felt the beginning of this year, or actually really when I turned 39, like things were going to start to blow up for me. And I don't really mean in a positive way. Like things were going to there's going to be a lot of like dismantling of like relationships and work and kind of like, I had pushed so hard through the pandemic and like the few years after, my push so hard, just had blinders on when it came to my professional life. But now like the dust has settled a little bit and like what's next? And so the idea of the book is called Fixed by 40. It's a little bit tongue in cheek, kind of like a mother, right? Like, of course, we're not going to be fixed by 40, but here are all the things that I'm doing to kind of like right my sails before my 40th birthday and beyond. So in the same way, Like a Mother was written with my experience woven in with expertise and some calls to action, this book will be the same way. It'll be like, here's month by month from the time I turned from the day after I turned 39 to the day I turned 40, which, so it's very much a book in progress.
Yeah, sure. Do you think, you don't think you'll have it done by your birthday, do you?
Well, right now it's all the note taking, right? Like the process, the things that I'm trying, different therapies. I did something called spinal energetics. I don't know if you ever heard of it. Like all these different kind of modalities to like fix ourselves, again, quote unquote, like crazy conversations I've had with my parents, with my husband, with my kids, with coworkers, with friends. It's just like a lot of like breaking down, my favorite word, to build it back up again. And 40 is there's going to be some information and research around why 40 is this big number for us, and like what it means. And to me, it's like, I finally feel like I'm going to be a grown up, even though I have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old and this crazy career and like, and I've been married and all this, but it feels like I'm kind of like staring down the road of a big grown-up number, and I want to know why that is too. So there's going to be a little bit of research, some psychology, and like a mixed bag of all the things that you can probably, if you are familiar with my work, you would have come to expect from me.
Oh, I love it. It's funny because I'm 52, and I remember turning 40, and I was like, I just feel like, who am I? Right. And I'm just getting started. Like, you just start to really come into your own. And it seems like you already have, like, you're figuring, yourself out. But yeah, I feel like, I'm not even going to use the phrase I use. It's the something 40s, but where you really start to not care at all what people think. You're like, this is who I am. Yeah. So,
And I don't really frame it as a negative thing. It's not something that I'm kind of dreading. Actually, for a long time, I had that number in my head. Like, that's when things are really going to take off for me. And in a way that, and I don't, again, not just professionally. Yeah. And this year has sort of been like the lead up to that. All those things that I thought in my 20s and my early 30s, like 40, when I hit 40, that's it. That's when things are going to, and so now it kind of, it's proving itself to be true because of all the work that I've been doing this year. So, and I didn't plan to write this book in my 20s. This book came to me, not even like, it came to me a few months ago. Right. So really, I was already doing the work, like this kind of like personal development, which I feel like I'm always doing.
Oh my God. I love it. I love it. Oh, I can't imagine your conversations with all your friends. Like, it must be really, I love such deep conversations. I say it like the conversations you have around a campfire, in your backyard, where you're just like, I don't know what happens in that setting, but I feel like your souls just come out and you just so really have the deepest conversations. And I feel like that's what your friends do. You and all your friends do. Let's talk about the podcast. So it's called The Breakdown with Bethany. So what does that word even mean? Like,
well,
what is the
of course,
title?
I love a play on words. I love a tongue-in-cheek reference. And
you're very good at it too.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. So, I'm an interviewer, a journalist, and first. And so we're going to break it down. We're going to tell me about you. What are we going to talk about? My podcast is a place where anyone, whether you're an A-list celebrity, whether you're a mom who's invented a cool new product, is come to talk to me about what they want to talk about.
Right.
Whatever it is. I don't care if you want to push a product. I don't care if you want to talk about, how you're reversing your age, your real age, like whatever you want to talk about, let's talk about it. So we're going to break it down. We're going to break down whatever you want to talk about. Then of course there's this idea of like the breakdown, right? Like the mental breakdown, the weight that we as women carry, so conversations on my podcast, you can expect to hear conversations about self-care, about ambition, about like the nitty-gritty with relationships. I mentioned to you before Eve Rodsky, which I highly recommend you get into her work. She's coming on this month.
Nice.
So these are, things that, I don't think they're conversations that you can't hear anywhere else, but there's really personal. It's like you are listening in on a conversation with your best friend. One of my favorite episodes, and I'm dropping a huge name here, but I don't care because it was such a big moment for me, was when I had Taraji P. Henson on, and she gave me advice about my son who was getting bullied at school because she wrote a book about it, right? About this beautiful little girl based on her, on Taraji. And I mentioned that my son was a bit different, and it's not really always accepted. He likes to wear funny things. He's a really outgoing, kind of weird, again, quote unquote, personality. And the other kids don't kind of see him for the brilliance that like me as his mother see. So then Taraji and I broke it down, and she kind of spun it in a way that helped me feel a lot of peace of mind. So you're going to hear conversations, like that, really intimate conversations with people who are getting to talk about whatever it is they want to talk about.
Oh, I love that. We're kind of in the same space. So I appreciate that. And I love that because that's why you're on the show too, because it's obviously working. And you, in your book, you talk about you use your podcast in this other book, in Like a Mother book. Tell me about that. So you use people that you've interviewed and then other people that you admire, right? Or have admired.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the podcast is...
Oh, wait, you interviewed Mindy, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I love her.
She was my first guest. And again, it was like I was getting all these offers for great interviews as a journalist, and the place where I was working at the time was like, we don't want you to do it. You're not talent, right? I've heard that so much in my life. Like, you're just not talent. Like, you're here to write. You're kind of here to be head down.
Where were you working? Can we say? You don't want to say? say. Okay,
right
okay,
now.
that's okay.
I'll tell you
okay.
off air.
Okay,
but
somewhere big.
I probably have
obviously.
mentioned it before. It was it's kind of a big place. Actually, you know what? I'll say it. It was the Meredith Corporation. They're now at Dot Dash. So it was before that. So I was kind of told you're doing again. I was told you're doing too much.
Right.
And
get a hold of yourself. Back down. You're not ready.
Like, who are you to bring on Mindy Kaling? Like, okay, sorry, not sorry. Right. So I was. So really, what it was.
I love her too.
She's fantastic.
And on all the shows and her own show.
And she's a writer and she's brilliant.
She is brilliant. Oh
and
God.
I just wanted to not the podcast lives as itself like on where you can find your podcast. We do a video version of it, but there were also these really great nuggets of wisdom that I'm always learning, and I do the podcast almost selfishly too, because
me too. I feel
really want to learn from these women, and so I was like, well, and there was definitely some overlap and alignment with the book, and so I put in a lot of it was inspiration for the book as well, because I kept hearing that over and over again from successful women, like just start, just do it. Women who were feeling more inspired after becoming mothers to create and start their businesses, women who were navigating postpartum depression but then coming out on the other side of it, and remembering to kind of look back at the other women, and just always being an advocate, a helping hand. And so that's all I could hope to be, and that's why I do the podcast. That's why I wrote the book. That's why I'm here talking to you today. Right.
I think it's interesting because, for so long we have said like a woman's, when she gets older, she's just a castaway, she's just not important anymore once you hit a certain age, and you see it, and people have lost their jobs or whatever it is because they reached a certain age. And it's, as I said, like I'm 52 and I feel like, gosh, I'm just getting started. I mean, I finally have, so much experience. We should be talking about it. We should be having these conversations more.
And when I was growing up, I do remember, to kind of pivot back to that number 40. I remember Cindy Crawford losing her Revlon contract because she hit 40. Sharon Stone talking about hitting 40 and not getting offered. So there is a number that feels like that's like the mark, right? But now we're going to push past it. We're having conversations. We're showing up in spaces where we weren't, supposed to be or not supposed to be past a certain age. But I'm fascinated by it, and I hope we continue to kind of break down those barriers.
I love it, and I think the book is so amazing. I don't know if I said this before, but you talk about self-talk in the book, and we talked a little bit about that. And you say that in the book, you talk about that your self-talk has changed over the years. It was kind to yourself when you were a kid, but as you got older, it changed. And you said, quote, "As I grew older, the talk shifted from positive, self-affirming conversations to hateful ones." And that really, I paused when I read it because it's so true. You have to, and you say, talk to yourself like your girlfriend would, like you would talk to your girlfriend.
Right.
And I say that to my own kids now. It's like, and then you think to yourself, would I really say that to someone else, the things I say to myself?
No, you would be mortified, right?
Right.
It'd be heartbreaking, and so I can't really pinpoint when that shift happened, but it's probably around the same time I started making myself feel really small.
You had an enlightenment the last, I don't know when. I didn't know you before, but clearly something where you're like, I'm done. I'm not doing this to myself anymore. I'm treating myself better.
Right. And I do think a lot of the catalyst for that was becoming a mother, because, you can really spiral into negativity, negative self-talk, negative ways of being. But then when you're caring and responsible for young children and someone else, it does shine a light on those parts of you that, you don't feel right. So, and I was, I guess, I want to say lucky enough because I was able to kind of bring myself out of it. Whereas I know that's not always the case for some women. I think mental illness, I think maternal mental health is a rampant, kind of disorder that we're not addressing that needs to be. So that's sort of like my next thing. Like I really want to address maternal mental health. I talk a lot about postpartum, not just being 6 weeks. Like I have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old. I can still, postpartum is just motherhood. Right. So I think we need to start naming that and really supporting mothers and in their mental health wherever they are. And so a lot of that has to do with the way that we talk to ourselves, the way that we show up for ourselves, like we show up for all those people that we care about and love.
Yeah. And you know what? Postpartum, that wasn't even taken seriously many years ago. Wasn't even people thought, oh, either they're crazy or they're just having a mental breakdown or whatever it was. And it was like, instead of asking, I noticed like people are so quick to judge other people, and instead of asking like, hey, what's going on?
Right.
What's going on with you? You okay?
And I find that, like, I'm not a therapist, but I find that
this is not therapy, everybody.
right. But I find that the people who are quick to judge really also is what's going on with you, right? Like, why do you feel so quick to judge me about what I'm saying or thinking? Right. Obviously that's a huge trigger for you. So maybe you need to go figure that out.
Yeah. Ooh, Bethany, that's so good. And all right. And I don't know if we talk quick, because I did want to. They're in chapter 4. We have about a minute and a half, so actually I don't know if we'll have time for this, but you talk about the shame that women take on if you're a single mom or not married, divorced or whatever, and I think the whole premise of your book is self-love. So if you can give one piece of advice to women, and we have about a minute, about how to silence that voice that says horrible things to your own self.
I think about this a lot, and I guess really what I want to say here is that is really to kind of hone in on the fact that you have everything you need to start. Whatever you think you're missing or lacking, or whatever you think you need to start the business, to travel, to have the baby, you already have it. So go ahead, and I think someone will catch you, even if it's yourself.
Oh gosh, I love that. All right, so a big thank you to Bethany Braun Silva for coming on the show. Listen to her podcast, guys. It's Breakdown with Bethany. Go buy her book, Like a Mother, Banish Guilt, Blaze Your Trail, and Break the Rules to Create the Life You Love. You've been listening to Secrets of Powerful Women. Head to powerfulwomenusa.com to get on the newsletter, listen to previous shows. I'm Jill Conway. Thank you so much for listening to the show focused on women, empowering women. I hope you are inspired to pursue your goals, believe in yourself, be courageous. I am here to remind you that your voice matters and that your story has power. Guys, we are stronger together, and together we are unstoppable. I hope you join me next time.
Yeah.